one another. So we're going to start out this week. Our theme for this summer is our theme for the summer is Imagine Your Story. And so my hope for our teens this summer is that we're going to be able to work through kind of coming up with a story and imagining what kind of stories we want to tell, but we'll also be talking about the books that we love and the ways that story elements are used. So this week, like I said, we're going to mostly be talking about we mentioned social media. We're mostly going to be talking about setting. But to start out, just to do a little icebreaker, I would put people in rooms, but we'll just do it from this screen. And so I'm going to put Olivia and Miss Denise into a group. And then I'm going to have our Jeff, if you will work with your teenage child on yours, and then the Kilmix, if you guys will work together. I'm going to give you 4 story elements. I have dice here that I'm going to roll for them, and you're going to work together to come up with a story to share with the group. Miss Denise and Olivia, if y'all want to talk out loud about the story that you're kind of forming, that's totally fine. If anyone wants to join in, that way you can. If you want to kind of tell me about it in the chat, okay? So I'm going to start with Miss Denise and Olivia, then we'll go to the Kilmix, then we'll go to Jeff and your children. So we have first is our setting cube, because that's what we're talking about this week. You guys are in a cave.
Okay.
Ooh. You have a dragon.
Okay.
And a fairy godmother.
Ooh.
Okay.
And a crystal ball. Okay. So the Kilmix, and there's lots of these. If you like these story cubes and you find that they're cool, they're super, you can check anywhere basically on the internet, and they're printable. Just type in story cubes and something similar will come up. So the Kilmix, you guys will have ocean and unicorn and genie. And I dropped that one, but you have a potion. I don't know if you can see it. And then Jeff and your children, if you will do, you have in order a forest, a mermaid, a giant troll, and a sword. And like I said, like you guys are welcome to use the chat feature. I'm gonna give everyone about 5 minutes to work through their story and think about the story that they want to tell. And then we'll have Miss Denise and Olivia share theirs verbally. And then if you guys just want to tell me kind of what happens in your story real short in the chat, we can read that out loud if you're comfortable with that. So we'll get that going. Olivia and Denise, if y'all want to work on your stories.
Oh, we're kind of doing that over text.
Oh, okay. That works for me. But yeah, so like I said, this summer is just talk about imagining your story. So just take your time and like think about, we're gonna work a little later on our personal stories that we might want to tell this summer, and I'm going to give you a craft or an activity to do there, and we'll kind of explore the way that setting can change story. But think about your setting, think about your stories, and in about 5 minutes we'll share. Couple more minutes. Olivia and Denise, how's your story coming along?
It's coming along really well.
Coming along real well? All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Olivia, you going to tell our story?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I think it was really fun.
Are you ready?
So what we did is we basically were just thinking like, well, what would happen? So our little dragon, he kept stealing everybody's marshmallows. And the fairy godmother was like, that's really mean. And he stole his brother's marshmallows. So she looked into her crystal ball to find out where he was hiding. So she went up to the cave that he was hiding in, and it turns out he was actually making everybody s'mores.
Oh,
that's very sweet. That's a very sweet. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you guys wanted to had your story ready. Yes, you are welcome to show your story now. To the Kilmix.
Oh,
whoa, yay! You all been busy.
We used the ocean, unicorn, genie, and potion that you gave us.
And so, that's cool.
So what did you use for the ocean? Is that
Unicorn who lived in the
okay?
No.
Go ahead.
genies. Well, sorry, the genie lived in the sea.
Okay.
And he wants to be mortal. And so he wants to make a potion out of unicorns that will make him mortal.
All right.
And so he goes on a journey to find a unicorn, and there's one on a beach admiring its reflection in the water. And he bursts out of the water and captures the unicorn in a cage of water. And she squeals. The unicorn remembers that the genie can grant wishes, and so she wishes to be free.
Mm-hmm.
And the genie has no choice but to set the unicorn free and to grant her wish. And so after that, the unicorn wishes for the genie to be immortal so that he doesn't have to eat any unicorns.
Oh, that's cool.
Good. I like that story.
Really,
That's
really
really
cool.
cute.
Good job, guys. Really
All
good
right,
job.
that's awesome. Thank you.
I know they went way above the
Oh.
sheet of paper, didn't they?
Above
They
and
just-
I know. I love it.
All
I
those
love it.
assorted craft supplies. And
So what did they make the ocean out of? What was that? Was that paper or was it cloth or
Use tissue paper.
tissue
Okay.
paper?
Very cool.
Yeah. And you
Good job.
did someone draw the unicorn and the genie?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good.
very good.
Very good.
Good job, guys.
That
That's
was
awesome.
the best story of all.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The characters, that was really good. So, you know, it's an unexpected setting for a genie and a unicorn, and I think that it made a pretty cool story.
Exactly.
So, but for those of you who are joining us from home, or that are joining us later and watching it, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a story to work through, and maybe you can send it as a message to us. So we have the ocean, we have a genie, and a unicorn,
Ooh.
and a magic wand.
Ooh.
So I'm not sure what you want to do with that, but unicorn, genie, ocean, magic wand.
That looks like that would be an interesting story.
I think those are fun. All right. So just to move on with what we're going to talk about this week, we are going to have, this week, I'm going to talk to you about a few books that we love and would love to share with you guys. I'm going to read a little snippet out of Cinder, and that is available. It's by Marissa Mayer. It's available on Hoopla and on Libby. And then, and the publisher is has been nice enough to share the first 5 chapters for free. It's from Fuel and Friends in New York. So if you're not sure if you like it, you can get the first 5 chapters for free from the author's page as well. So I'm just gonna read the first couple of pages, and then we're going to have a little discussion about what the setting does, okay? So the screw through Cinder's ankle had rusted. The engraved cross marks worn into a mangled circle. Her knuckles ached from forcing the screwdriver into the joint as she struggled to loosen the screw, one gritting twist after another. By the time it was extracted far enough for her to wrench free with her prosthetic steel hand, the hairline threads had been stripped clean. Tossing the screwdriver onto the table, Cinder gripped her heel and yanked the foot from the socket. A spark singed her fingertips and she jerked away, leaving the foot to dangle from the tangle of red and yellow wires. She slumped back with a relieved groan. A sense of release hovered at the end of those wires. Freedom. Having loathed the too small foot for 4 years, she swore she would never put the piece of junk back on again. She just hoped Aiko would be back soon with its replacement. Cinder, the only full-service mechanic at New Beijing's weekly market, without a sign, her booth hinted at her trade only by the shelves of stock Android parts that crowded the walls. It was squeezed into a shady cove between a used NetScreen dealer and a silk merchant, both of whom frequently complained about the tangy smell of metal and grease that came from Cinder's booth, even though it was usually disguised by the aroma of honey buns from the bakery across the square. Cinder knew they really just didn't like being next to her. A stained tablecloth divided Cinder from browsers as they shuffled paths. The square was filled with shoppers and hawkers, children and noise, the bellows of men as they bargained with robotic shopkeepers, trying to talk the computers down from their desired profit margins. The hum of ID scanners and the monotone voice receipts as money changed accounts. The net screens that covered every building and filled the air with the chatter of advertisements, news reports, and gossip. Cinder's auditory interface dulled the noise into a static thrumming. But today, one melody lingered above the rest, and she couldn't quite drown it out. A ring of children were standing just outside her booth, trilling, "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down," and laughing hysterically as they collapsed into the pavement. A smile tugged at Cinder's lips. Not so much the nursery rhyme, a phantom song about pestilence and death that had regained popularity in the past decade. The song itself made her squeamish, but she did love the glares from passers-by as the giggling children fell over their paths. The inconvenience of having to swarm around the writhing bodies stirred grumbles from the shoppers, and Cinder adored the children for it. So in that paragraph, there are a couple things that hint to the setting of the story. Now, Cinder is a retelling of Cinderella, but it's obviously set in the future. What are some things you heard about the setting that changed the feel of the story? I'm going to those who are coming to my chat are welcome, but I'm also going to ask the three of us on screen who have not heard much of the story before about what
I've actually
speaks
read
to
this
the setting.
entire series.
Okay, it's a good series.
It's a really good
It's
series.
a good series.
The robotic parts.
Robotic parts. That's kind of world building, like setting up, like in this world, not everybody is necessarily human.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yep.
The net screen, like what the other vendors are selling, is
Mhm.
kind of strange. So it's hinting to the future.
mhm.
I
What
think everything hints to the future. Everything that's going on, just it's, even though you don't see any pictures or anything, you just see the darkness of some of the words and things.
Yeah.
Well, and the kids playing, getting everybody upset because the kids were in the way.
Mhm.
Right.
So,
Kind of gives you that like kind of dystopian edge of people being uncaring about what the children are doing. How do we feel about the nursery rhyme that's being sung? What does that foreshadow for the story? Any ideas?
I know, but I don't think I want to say.
Well, Ring Around the Rosie,
something burning, something.
maybe, or maybe it foreshadows
Is
just
it from the like influenza epidemic?
Yeah, well, we know that the Ring Around the Rosie came from I believe, the time of the Black Death, and so we know that it came from people carrying posies in their pockets because they believed that scent got rid of corruption, and so just kind of hinting towards the future darkness of the story. And thank you guys for chiming in there. And then, it's a pretty cool way to set up a retelling of Cinderella. How do you think the story is going to be different than the Cinderella we remember? Olivia, I guess you can't answer, but
Yeah,
you
I can't.
pretend that you know. But
Well, obviously she's a robot.
yeah, she's a robot.
Well,
And
sort of.
it's cyborg, but
yeah.
yeah. But just from that little bit, that's what you would know.
Mhm.
So do we think the story would go the exact same way, or that it might veer a little differently? We don't want to give away too much. Olivia,
Well,
you can give a little bit.
I
Yeah,
have not,
I'm just gonna.
I know I have not read the series, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know anything that you all are alluding to or anything like that.
Mm,
But it sounds like the worth of females, whether they're semi-human or not, isn't part of the culture at that time. Then she's in a menial,
position.
which now we think mechanics are, it's a trade to learn, but that's my impression of it, that
Maybe she's just scraping by.
Yep.
I mean, Cinderella in the original story is,
Right.
Not impoverished, but impoverished by the treatment of her,
right.
like her stepmother. So that fits in with the story. I have a couple more stories to share with you. I know I spoke with you guys who were joining us last week a little bit about the Land of Stories. And so the Land of Stories kind of takes your typical fairy tale setting. They're children from now that venture through the storybook into your typical fairy tale setting. But what happens when you take the settings of different fairy tales and you make them all happen in the same place? How does that change the way the characters act, and how does that let you tell a new story? And so I highly recommend that series. If you guys have anything that you want to share about it that you thought was really cool about the setting, we'd love to hear it from you guys.
Did Miss Tubby, if I remember correctly, they have read part of the Land of Stories, or maybe
Yes,
even all of that?
I think they said they read all of them when we talked last week. So that's an incredible series. So we
It's
highly
really fun.
recommend checking out. Olivia, have you read it? Have you
Land
read
of Stories.
the story? Yeah.
Yes,
Land
I have.
Stories. Okay, so what is something about the setting of that stands out to you aside from regular fairy tales?
It's great that I don't know how to say this without spoiling anything.
Okay.
but it's great that it's like it was a regular normal setting of like everyday life, and then all of a sudden they're in a fairy tale world.
Mhm.
And so it's like all of a sudden just the jarring transition of in between and how they got there. That is something new and different that I really like.
So that kind of changes your expectation of what's going to happen. If you start out in one place and you stay there, then that you know that, okay, so the world has been set up and here's where I am. And if you change places, that changes the action of the story. So maybe when you're thinking about crafting your own story, you want to decide if you're going to stay in one place and one world, or if you're going to change between worlds and use that as your starting action. I've got one more to share with you guys. This is my personal favorite comic I think I've read this year. It is called The Midas Flush. It is from North, Pearline, and Lamb. And it is about, if anyone knows the story of the Midas touch, King Midas in Greek, either Greek or Roman antiquity, wished for the ability to turn everything he touches to gold. This story takes that and imagines the repercussions of that thousands of years in the future. And so we have in the Midas Flush a starship captain and their crew going to find Earth after it has been turned to solid gold by King Midas, and looking for Midas himself to use as a weapon against a oppressive regime that has taken over their home planets and has killed a lot of the people they care about, which is sad, but it's a really great way to use a fairy tale in a new and fresh setting that's really different. Also, velociraptors in spacesuits is probably the greatest indicator of this setting that I have, is that there are humanoid dinosaurs that are capable of action and human emotion. So I highly recommend that. And like I said, it's very strange. So if everyone is available to participate as they can, if you will either find in your home a small box or a piece of paper and something to color or draw or write with. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to grab that and come back and join me.
There we go. Got it.
Got a piece of paper, something to draw with, write with. All right, so our exercise right now is, I'm going to show you mine, but I want you to imagine the setting for the story you want to tell for the summer. And of course you can change it as we go on if you get better ideas, but I want you to imagine a setting and the story that you want to tell. And I want you to fold the paper. If you're a paper, I want you to fold the paper in half like this and draw the sky and draw the ground, like the physical setting. I want you to draw kind of things that represent the setting, either in the sky or on the ground of your box. Or if you have a box, I had a box. And I took a bunch of assorted art supplies. And I filled my ground with these little plants, and I drew the night sky. And so the story that I want to tell is, I want to think about Little Red Riding Hood, but I want to think about what would happen if we put Little Red Riding Hood in space. And so my planet in my setting is a planet that grows. Little Red Riding Hood lives on a farm on this planet, and they grow all these like beautiful bioluminescent, which means they glow, plants. And her grandmother lives in a care facility on the moon of their planet, but it's very expensive. And so Little Red wants to take her plants that she's grown to market and try to sell them so that she can pay for her grandmother who lives on the moon here for her care in this like nursing home facility. And so if I think about, well, it's space, so what kind of trouble would she run into? Is she going to run into a space wolf? Or what if she runs into something more likely like nefarious aliens? Or how does that story change when you put it in space? She's no longer delivering cookies to her grandmother. She's taking plants to the market to pay for her grandmother's, care. Like how does setting change your story? So kind of think about your setting and then think about how that setting feels and what that means to your story. Is your setting really gritty and dark, and does that make your story feel dark? Or is your setting very light and full of colors, and is it a beautiful place, and are you using that to show like how fantastic and magical things will be? So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes, and once you're done with your drawing, if you guys will just share with me what you have created. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves if you would like to, and kind of talk through what you're creating, if you please. I hear the furious sounds of pencil scratching.
That's probably my Sharpie. Why are Sharpies so loud? That's the real question.
I'm not sure about that one. Like I said, any books that we mention or things that we're doing in the programs are always available online afterwards. As soon as I'm done with this, I'll be uploading it to getting ready to go to YouTube and other places. But any books we mention and any activities that we do, there will be photos available in the summer crafts page, and there will also be on the event page on our scpl wv.org/summer 2020 on the book points where you log your books on the events page. In there will be links to the books that we read, and we'll also try to post those things to Facebook if you follow us there. The library does have a Snapchat, which we use sometimes to reach out to our teen patrons. We also have an Instagram and a Twitter and a YouTube. So feel free to join us there and share with us the things that you create. If you're inspired by our programs to make something, we'd love to see like a photo of your craft. So just join us there. We'd also love to hear those stories that we shared the prompts for earlier. If you want to send them along to us, we'll be happy to post them as a teaser for what we do.
I have no idea how this is going to end, but I'm starting it.
All right.
I am too.
That's the whole idea, is that like you don't need to know where your story's going right now. We're just going to kind of talk through the summer about what do we like in the stories. Like if one of you guys wanted to share what's a if you have a fairy tale retelling you can think of that was in a surprising setting, like what stood out to you about it being different? I mean, I know we're talking about a kind of weird one with the school age kids next week. We're not going to read it, but we're going to talk about it. That's a retelling of Jack and Beanstalk. So what's that one, Miss Annette?
This is not. It just doesn't even have any green in it. Yes, maybe it does, but it.
No, I don't mean for yours, but that's where we're gonna look a little bit at Winona and the Cornstalk, right?
Yes.
So what happens if you take Jack and the Beanstalk and put it in Texas in Cowboys? So how is that different? And that's kind of what we want to think about.
I know. Instead of going up to a big old castle in the sky where the big giant lives, they're going over to Big Dude Ranch out there in Texas. So all the things that have there, and we all know Fee Fi Fo Fum from Jack and the Beanstalk, well, we'll just have to see what happens to cowgirls out there in Texas. So, and interesting, and almost there are all kinds of variations of almost any, like Ms. Toby did earlier today. We took Cinderella, and now we're talking about Cinders, and it's the same premise. So it's just we've taken all of those fairy tales and revamped them a lot of different ways. So.
All right. So who's ready to share their setting box?
I am.
All right, Miss
Let me
Olivia.
get it to make it stand up a bit. Okay. So let's see if I can turn my screen around. Okay.
All right.
So in my strange, very, very strange world, there is only one color, and that is green. There's different shades of it, but there's only one color. And this is the setting where everything is green, except suddenly a different color appears, which is blue. And that will be the start of my story. As you can see, it's landing on Earth, or whatever this planet is.
I like it. I like it.
Thank you.
All right, Miss Annette, are you ready to share yours?
Okay, can you see? Look, can you see
Oh,
mine?
maybe. Yep.
Ooh,
All right.
That's a monster.
Well, I know. After I started this, I'm thinking, I'm going to do something more friendly next week. I'm going to rethink about this. Where my mind went on this one.
Okay.
Anyway, there are no yellows in the sun anymore. It's all turned to orange because it's gotten so hot and everything. And the clouds aren't even white; they're brown. And so the sky is not even blue, and the people and the things that live in the ocean have come to the top to see what's going on. Is
What's happening in your setting? That's good. That's
Ooh.
interesting. All right, Miss
Okay.
Denise, you got one to share
I
with us?
kind of scared myself on that one.
I'm going to try. I am not very artistic, so, So the bottom here is supposed to be the ocean, right?
Mhm.
And so the ocean washes up because here's the flat part, the ocean. And there is a little crab and a little starfish. And they're coming onto the shore thinking that they're going to come up and lay under this palm tree. But then they look again at the palm tree, and the palm tree is actually a resident named Larry. So they discover that Larry just looks like a palm tree. So they start having a conversation, and boy, is it getting interesting.
So in your world, palm trees are and like that's an important part of when you're creating a story. You want to think about, well, all right, so we live on Earth, and if your story is going to take place somewhere besides Earth or somewhere in Earth's future and Earth's past, we want to think about, okay, well, what's different? Are the people different? Is the government different? Is the color scheme different? Things like that. And what's different about this place? Because that's really what makes the story feel alive, is when you have the past and the world built out around it. So we want to think about our settings. All right. Well, so for next week, I kind of want you guys to think a little bit. I would love to see next week if you want to bring in if you haven't made your diorama box, if you want to bring it or send us a photo of it, we'll kind of go through those next week and talk about those if you didn't get to share with us today. And then the other thing I want you guys to do is, if you will, we would ask, I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to show you a web resource that you can use. I want you guys, there are a couple things. So for next week, I want you guys to use this website right here. And it's called tabletopaudio.com. And it has a really nifty, and all it is instrumental open source music. So you can use the music anywhere, and it's not copyrighted, and it's provided by this as a free resource for people to use in movies and games and things like that. So and then you can use this filter here. So let's say someone give me like a genre of story. Like here we have fantasy, sci-fi, historical, like modern? Are we in nature? So give me a setting, and we'll try to find a song that goes along with it.
Well, let's do fantasy in nature.
Whoop. I don't think I spelled that right. Oh, there we go. Fantasy, and then we want to do nature. So let's see. We have nature. Let's try fantasy forest. Maybe we'll just go back to fantasy and we'll see what comes up. All right, so let's look. Fantasy and nature. So here's one, and I'm going to actually share my computer sound with you. So this one is ambiance and music. Let's do Swamp Planet. That sounds fun. That's kind of fantasy, naturey. And I don't know if you guys can hear, but it's kind of this like gives you like a feeling for your setting. Like, what is it? Kind of creepy? Do we want like, so does our setting feel like this, or does it feel like happier? What do you think, Olivia? Does our feeling feel like
I
this
think
or
it sounds
happier?
kind of creepy. It's kind of like, woo.
So do we think we want like, do you think for your setting, do you think you want something a little more upbeat?
Well,
I
look at
think
the one that says Secret Garden.
All right, let's see
Ooh.
this one.
Yeah, that one sounds like it.
So does that sound more like what you were thinking for your story?
Yeah.
So,
So it sounds like everything's peaceful, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's another color, and everyone's scared.
right. So, pausing this. So I want you guys for next week, if you want, just kind of, if you want to kind of play with this and find a song that you feel like matches your setting, and we'll play a little snippet of the song. So take your time and do that. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is our library has all kinds of free resources for our patrons of all ages. But one of the really cool ones is Freegal. And so with Freegal, you can get up to 5 free downloads a week for music to keep. And then you can listen to up to 5 hours of music a day ad-free, I believe. Is that correct, Denise? And so you're welcome to use this. We can't share these because they are copyrighted, so don't bring me one of these next week. You can tell us about one, and we'll listen to it on our own. But it's a great resource. You just sign up with your library card, and you're able to access this and all of the music that is available there. So it's a really great resource. We don't just do books at the library. We have music and all kinds of movies and all kinds of stuff, and we'll talk about a few more of those resources this summer. So that said, unless there is anything that someone else would like to share, that's about all we have for this week. And as I said,
Toby, what's our secret code for tonight?
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. You do have a secret code for tonight. As we were talking, our secret code for tonight is Land of Stories in all caps. I'm gonna throw it into the chat for you guys, so you can just copy and paste it if you would like to. If I can spell land correctly. My fingers are slipping. So Land of Stories. So make sure that you get on there and you, in all caps, Land of Stories, so that you can get your points for attending our program. Thank you so much for coming. And check out the books that we mentioned this week if you got time and interest.
Yep. And we'd love to see you next week as well.
We would.
So keep reading, keep logging books. It was great to hear from you guys, and glad you joined us tonight.
It'll be in
All right,
Land of Littles next week.